Well, here's the house. In the fall of 2015, lush and filled with growth. But it wasn't always that way. Back when we first got the house, it started off with an empty lot, filled with absolutely nothing. Nothing but dirt. Really bad dirt and rock and just a mess. But the house itself was going up faster, looking more like a house than a construction site, with the siding being added, and now the framing for the sidewalks, and now we have sidewalks. Woohoo! And a 1/4 inch of topsoil, if that much, just disguises the rock. And now a little landscaping. And there we are, the day we actually got to own the house. Woohoo! And as you can see now, it's filled in a bit 9 years later, with all the banana trees and plants and bushes and more trees and sunshine and canna. The trees in front have grown quite a bit, so there's a lot more shade and a lot less sun. The aspen tree, which I got in Colorado, and the palms in front of the house, and more banana trees, and the magnolia tree. It's looking pretty good. And as you can see, I filled in one side of the front lawn with another bed, filled with coneflowers, daylilies, and all kinds of other stuff. And here's what it looked like before I put in that bed. Just a house with just a tree, and it looks pretty naked. Then I decided to put in a pine tree, but still, it didn't quite work. That's when I figured out it's time to do something different. So, with my hose, I laid out the form for a new bed, got a giant rock and put it in, and then started to build the bed around it. Here it is before the bed and after I started to work on it. And here it is again with the rock, the bed sort of outlined. Then I amended the soil and added mulch. And this is the other side of the driveway. I put in a bed there too. Here's the bed with the mulch. And now here's how it looks today. Filled in. Starting with the cholla cactus at the foot of that stone. And everything that grew on top of it. The coneflowers, the pine tree, the maple tree. Here's how it looks with the coneflowers flowering, both the purple and the yellow. And of course, the palm garden in front of the house, the Trachycarpus fortunei. And here's how it looks coming out of the front door. There's the coral plant, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And of course, the palm trees, the jelly palm in the very foreground at the bottom of the screen, and the Trachycarpus fortunei, which is a Chinese windmill palm, the hardiest of all palms, which is why I'm able to grow it in the ground, in a place where it gets down to 12 below. And as you see it here, it's grown pretty good over the 8 years it's been in the ground, as we now focus on the jelly palm, the hardiest of pinnate palms. Look that one up. The coral plant growing in a pot by the porch. This is what it looked like maybe a year after I planted the palms, after the first winter. A little decimated, but growing back. I covered it up then in the winter. This is what it looks like when it's starting to warm up. They look a little sick, but then they grow new leaves and start to recover. You can see some of the first new leaves there. And here's the jelly palm with the first new leaves growing out of it. And the Trachycarpus with its new leaves. More new leaves. Starting to actually look healthy again. And the yard is filling in there around the palm trees. And they're getting bigger. Here's what it looked like about 4 years ago. We brought in some old guy for scale. Oh, that's me. Here's how it looked about 3 years ago. And of course, they grew bigger and bigger. Here's a wintertime shot. To get it through the hardest part of winter, I wrapped the trunk with the landscape fabric. Underneath the fabric are holiday lights. If it gets below zero, I turn on the lights and it keeps it warm. A couple of years ago, it got down to -12, and here's how it looked when I pulled the covering off the tree. Some of the leaves don't look good, but it grows back. and it flowers just as it starts to grow the new leaves. And you can see the flowers with the first clump of new leaves coming out. A couple of months later, now it looks more like a palm tree again, lush and green and getting taller. Who's the old guy there with the beard? Oh, that's me. And here's how it looks in October of 2015. The jelly palm in the foreground. And the coral plant, which I planted from a seed 24 years ago. And behind it, of course, the trachycarpus. The coral plant's interesting. This is the first year it ever flowered in the 23 years since I planted it. There's the flower. And there's the fruit, which I tried to plant, but it didn't germinate. So now we move on from the palm garden and the banana trees and the crepe myrtles. About 6 or 7 years ago, when I was visiting my daughter Jessica in Colorado, picked up an aspen tree. It grew to about 30 feet, but then the heat and fungus killed it down to the ground. But suckers have grown up from the roots. And here's one of the suckers. It's now about 15 feet tall. You can get a whole forest from one tree because it grows from the roots. Here's the bed on the other side of the driveway I made. And here's how it looks today. Banana trees are full, so is the grass and all the canna. And it really looks lush. Here's the view from the other side looking toward the street with the red maple on one side. And as you can see, they are very happy. And so am I. You're probably wondering what I do in the winter. Well, I dig up about half of my banana trees and pot them up. Haul them to the back, which is not a lot of fun because they are heavy. I have to cut the ones that are too tall, the tops off, and then I haul them into the basement under the grow lights for the winter. Then I have to haul them up the hill in the spring. It's a hard job because these things are heavy. Boy, I'm getting too old for this shit. Then I have to dig the hole again, put the tree in the ground, and ta-da! It's going to be happy for the next 7 or 8 months until I have to dig it up again. Here I am showing you the scale of the trees. And this is what happens when they flower. Got this giant purple flower, and you see the baby bananas, and then of course you get a good bunch of bananas. And it takes about 18 months for a tree to grow big enough to have bananas. And that's why I try and keep them in the ground as long as possible. Here's the front porch, which is a nice spot to sit. And as you can see, I've kind of surrounded it with plants. It's kind of lush. And here's the deck as we're heading toward the backyard. And it's another nice shady spot to sit, there with the coconut palm in the corner. Coconut palm? Yeah, well, I have to have one. It is my favorite tree on planet Earth, you know? So every year I drag it in the winter and bring it out in the spring, and it's doing okay. Coconut palm is a very touchy tropical plant. Even 40 degrees will damage it, which you might notice on some of the leaves. Here's the view of the other side of our deck with the lady palm. And the catawba tree now in the background. This tree looks gorgeous when it flowers. Each leaf is about 1 foot long, and it contrasts nicely with those creamy white flowers. In the fall right now, the leaves just kind of turn brown and fall off. When this house was built 9 years ago, there was nothing back there, just clay and rock. Even the topsoil was scraped away, and I started out with 0 and had to plant all my trees myself. It was a mess. Hard to hack through the rock with a pickaxe. And it started to fill in the back. As you can see, this is the catawba tree when I first planted it about 8 years ago. A stick with a few leaves on it. And then a lot of light came through because there wasn't much shade back there yet. Then the trees grew and we got lots of shade. Looking from the deck down to the patio, another clump of banana trees. what a surprise. Yeah, I have them everywhere. And I leave half of them in the ground and save the ones I dig up. And now there's the golden rain tree. Well, the leaves are starting to turn yellow because it's October. But it also has very showy flowers. The whole tree turns a nice bright yellow for a couple of weeks in the spring. And it looks gorgeous and attracts every flying insect in the neighborhood. And this is a red maple in the backyard. Now I'm standing down below the deck, under the catawba tree, in the backyard itself. And being fall, it's quite colorful. The problem is, the flowering season is done, so there's not much in flowers. Now remember, I started out with nothing 9 years ago. And then, of course, it changed as the light conditions changed. More shade, different plants. I have, on the other side of the deck, more banana trees. What a surprise! And as you can see, the controlled woods have filled in, because that whole area to the left was nothing but clay, dirt, and rock. No good topsoil at all, and no trees. And for every tree I planted, I had to hack a hole through the rock with a pickaxe. Oh, what a mess. I'm getting too old for this shit. And now that the trees are established, the shade is deepening, and it looks more like a forest. It being fall, I've got to show what the fall leaves look like. Some people may love fall. I like it for about a week when it's colorful, but I call it the season of death because right after that comes 6 months of gray and gloom and no color and naked trees. Ugh. But the color does look nice, as you can see right here, from the vantage point of the patio. The patio now exists in deep shade, so I have shade-loving plants around it, but it first started out in bright sunshine 9 years ago when the trees were little that I planted. Here's a view about 5 years ago. The red bud is blooming. It's March, and here's the patio today, well, as of October 2015. As we start to look down the hill into the areas that I call controlled forest, where I planted mostly native plants. I've been pulling up things that I do not like to grow there, while letting the other native species that I do like grow. Here's a view in early spring 5 years ago, showing you the layout. So you can see how the little trail goes down to a lower area, about 15 feet lower than the upper area of the backyard. Now, let's look at the trail. Yeah, this is what it looked like when I first put the trail in, almost 10 years ago. And now here it is today. And this is one of my problem trees. It's a Phoenix robeleni, a pygmy date palm that I planted from a seed 25 years ago. Oh, wow. The problem is, it's now about 12 feet tall, and my ceilings in the basement under the grow lights are about 8 feet. So every year I bring it in, and I have to tilt the pot it's in at more of an angle. Now it's about 45 degrees, and the question is, how much more can I do that? But I keep trying every year. And now let's take a walk down the path. The jacaranda tree on the left side, one of my palms on the right. The area to the right is covered with coneflowers. This time of year, all you see are the seed heads. But what I do is I take the seeds, scatter them every year to fill it in even more, and it's crowding out the plants I don't want. And now, one of my flowering trees is my mimosa tree, which I planted about 7 years ago. And it has grown, dropped seeds like crazy, and have about 2 or 3 volunteers, which are younger versions of the same thing. And the flowers I love because they flower for about 3 months with these bright pink puffs of color. And the finely cut leaves are really nice. My landscaping philosophy is kind of like Florida landscaping. Lots of showy flowers, flowering trees, almost a tropical look. And here's the mimosa with the seed pods hanging, which of course means more volunteers. Now let's continue on down the path toward the lower seating area, which is kind of set in the woods. I think I'm going to revamp it. It's been kind of crumbling for about 8 years now. What's nice about this spot is it's deep in the woods, looking back toward the house up the hill there. But as you face the other direction, the woods are pure nature. They've never been changed since creation, I guess. Dogwood trees, pin oaks, prairie oaks, all kinds of oaks. Not many maple-type trees in this part of the world. But in the fall, here in mid-October, it looks nice and colorful. And because they're old-growth trees, they stretch extremely high to the sky. But they're skinny because they've been competing for light with their neighbors. And yes, I guess I must admit that fall color is beautiful. But again, it lasts 1 week and then it's done. Then what do you get? No color until March, when the grass starts to green up and then the bushes take over about April 1st and the trees pop out about the second week of April. Looking back toward the back of the house, it looks extremely lush, like it's been like that forever. Now as we head back up the trail from the seating area down in the woods, wow, it looks like I should have raked up the path before I shot this video. Problem is, I did, but more leaves keep falling. I think that's why they call it fall. Looking up toward the house. Continuing up the pathway. This is what it looked like about 7 years ago, when it was still a lot of light enough to grow grass and light-loving flowers. They're long gone now because now it's deep shade because of all the tree cover. That's what happens when you plant trees. Heading back up the path toward the patio, passing the jacaranda on the right. That's in a pot, of course, because they don't take freezing temperatures at all. That jacaranda has never flowered yet, but when they do, they flower twice a year with these brilliant blue flowers. But I can't get it to flower yet. Probably because it knows it's not in Florida. Looking back toward the woods, you can see how secluded it is and how backed up to nature it is. The canna, you see, these are volunteers. Seeds had dropped the previous year, and to my surprise, some seedlings had popped up. And then I take the seedlings and put them where I want them to grow, which means more showy flowers. I guess I should amend my thoughts on winter and fall, because spring is so glorious. The horse chestnut comes out flowering with very, very prominent flower stalks. The color is immensely beautiful. And of course the plum tree flowers, and the irises come up in bloom. And the redbud with the red leaves comes out with the golden chain tree in the background. Golden chain tree and a golden rain tree. I have one of each in the yard, both very different trees, but the flowers are just golden yellow. And the columbine comes up with its own showy flowers. And I've spread that throughout the yard. The azaleas and the hostas are lush and beautiful. The daylilies are looking for the sun. And of course, the coneflowers, which are everywhere. They're just so easy to grow and keep spreading. And I like them because they flower a long time in the summer. And of course, the trees themselves, you just can't beat that color. Oh man, it's gorgeous. And the hollyhocks come up with showy flowers. It looks like we keep all the pollinating insects happy. And more flowers just come up everywhere where I want them to grow. The woods themselves are blooming in the spring, and so are my geraniums. And of course, the catawba tree. Can't beat those flowers, except maybe by the mimosa trees, which have their own showy flowers. And you just can't top nature, especially when I get to control it the way I do. And the front of the house, the back of the house, it's kind of like the way I want it to be. But who knows what the next few years are going to bring. So, it's time to wake up, because the tour of the yard is over. Come on, wakey, wakey. I know you probably fell asleep about 6 minutes ago, so hope you enjoyed the tour of the yard. My advice to you is go out there, get your hands dirty, and experiment, because you never know how it's going to come out. And if you make a mistake, you can always pull it up and start all over again.